In a crowded cafe on a rainy Tuesday morning in downtown Chicago, a powerful CEO raised her hand and slapped a hard-working black single dad right across the face. Gasps filled the room. Phones came out. But then her own bodyguard stepped forward, stared at the man's arm, and froze. The scar he saw changed everything. What happened next will stay with you long after this story ends. If this kind of heartfelt story moves you, please take a second to subscribe to Whispers of Heart 0.2, hit that like button, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Your support helps us share more true stories about the quiet power of kindness. Marcus Thompson wiped the rain from his jacket as he stepped into the warm cafe near the river. At 38, he carried the weight of 2 jobs and a little girl named Lily who was waiting at after-school care. Today was her birthday. He had just enough money for a small cupcake and a coffee to keep him going through the night shift at the warehouse. His hands were rough from years of honest work, and a long, pale scar ran from his left wrist up toward his elbow, a mark from a night he never talked about. The cafe was packed with people in suits rushing between meetings. Marcus stood in line, quiet, eyes tired but kind. In front of him stood Elena Vargas, CEO of a major tech company. She was late for a board call, her phone buzzing non-stop, her mind already 3 meetings ahead. When the barista called her name wrong and handed her the wrong order, frustration boiled over. She turned sharply, bumped into Marcus, and spilled her latte across his worn shirt. "Watch where you're standing," she snapped. Marcus steadied her cup with both hands, even as the hot liquid soaked through to his skin. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Let me help." "Don't touch me," she said, louder than she meant to. In the heat of the moment, her hand flew up and struck his cheek. The sound cracked through the cafe like a gunshot. Silence fell. People stared. Marcus's face stung, but he did not raise his voice. He simply stepped back, eyes lowered, and whispered, "It's okay. Accidents happen." Elena's face flushed with sudden shame, but pride kept her from apologizing. Her bodyguard, a tall man named James who had protected her for 6 years, moved closer. He had seen the slap. Then his eyes locked on Marcus's left arm. The scar. The exact shape. The same curve. James's breath caught. Years earlier, James had been a young Marine stationed overseas. One night their convoy hit an IED. Fire, smoke, screaming. James's best friend was trapped under burning wreckage. James stepped between Elena and Marcus, voice steady but thick with emotion. "Ma'am, this man saved my friend's life. That scar is from the night he pulled him out of a burning vehicle. He didn't have to. He just did it." Elena stared. The cafe remained silent. Marcus looked down at the floor, embarrassed by the attention. "It was a long time ago," he said softly. "Anyone would have done the same." But James shook his head. "No. Not anyone. Most people ran. You ran toward the fire." Elena's anger drained away, replaced by a deep, aching regret. She saw the coffee stain on Marcus's shirt, the quiet dignity in his posture, the way he still held himself with respect even after being struck in public. She thought of her own father, who had raised her alone after her mother passed, working double shifts so she could go to college. Suddenly the powerful CEO felt small. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I was wrong. Completely wrong. Please, let me make this right." Marcus started to refuse, but Elena insisted. She paid for his coffee, bought the largest birthday cupcake the cafe had, and then did something no one expected. She sat down with him at a corner table and listened. She learned about Lily, about the nights Marcus stayed awake balancing bills, about the way he still found time to read bedtime stories even when exhaustion pulled at his eyes. Elena listened without interrupting, something she rarely did in her high-pressure world. When they finished, she wrote a check, not as charity, but as recognition. "This is for Lily's birthday and for the rest of the month so you can breathe," she said. "And if you're willing, my company has openings in logistics. Real benefits. Real hours. You already proved what kind of man you are." Marcus's eyes filled, but he kept his voice steady. "Kindness doesn't need a stage," he told her. "It just needs a person willing to see another person." James clasped Marcus's shoulder like an old brother. Elena stood and faced the quiet cafe. "I was wrong today," she said clearly so everyone could hear. "This man showed me more strength in one moment than I've shown in years. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do next." Word spread quickly. Customers who had recorded the slap deleted their videos. Some came over to shake Marcus's hand. A young woman bought coffee for the next person in line. An older gentleman left an extra tip with a note that simply read, "Pass it on." That evening Marcus walked into the after-school center carrying the cupcake and a quiet smile. Lily's eyes lit up when she saw him. He knelt down, hugged her tightly, and whispered, "Happy birthday, baby girl. Today someone reminded me that good still lives in the world." In the weeks that followed, Marcus started the new job. The hours were steady. The pay covered the bills and left a little extra for Lily's soccer shoes. Elena began a company program that helped single parents with flexible schedules and emergency funds. She never forgot the feeling of that slap, or the grace that met it. James and Marcus stayed in touch, two men bound by an old scar and a new understanding. Kindness is not always loud. Sometimes it is a man who refuses to answer anger with anger. Sometimes it is a woman willing to admit she was wrong in front of strangers. Sometimes it is a bodyguard who remembers a quiet act of courage from years ago and speaks up when it matters most. We all carry scars, some on our skin, some in our hearts. The ones that matter most are the ones that remind us we once chose to help when it would have been easier to look away. In a world that moves too fast and judges too quickly, a single moment of grace can rewrite an entire story. So the next time someone bumps into you, or speaks sharply, or seems lost in their own stress, pause. Look closer. You never know the battles they have already fought or the quiet heroism they carry. A kind word, a second chance, a simple apology, these small things can heal more than we ever realize. Marcus still stops by that same cafe sometimes. The barista knows his order. Elena still visits when she can, and they share a quiet coffee like old friends. The scar on his arm has faded a little with time, but the lesson it carries has only grown stronger. Kindness costs nothing, yet it can change everything. Today, somewhere in your own city, someone needs the version of you that chooses grace over judgment. Be that person. The world is already a little brighter because people like Marcus exist, and because people like Elena learn to see them. Carry that light with you. Pass it on. You never know whose story you might rewrite with one simple act of kindness.